Welcome into New Track Record. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you for the final time in 2023, talking all things IndyCar. Just final time for this year, but it has been a wild couple of weeks.
It's been a while, and we promised to only be positive on today's show.
Yeah, we are.
We'll see how long this lasts. Positive vibes.
We're talking about IndyCar's wish list. That will be our main topic. We'll get into the Sting Ray Robb news that came down, of course, the day after we recorded last week. Him to Foyt, and more about the who's going where.
What's Benjamin Pedersen doing?
Yeah, we'll get into that, and a few other notes, items as well. Your comments too, so that's all to come. But first off, hi Justin.
Hello. I asked you this on our morning show. Uh-huh. Have you finished your Christmas shopping yet?
Almost.
I
just have to do stocking stuffers.
Nice. Now, who do you stock stuffings for?
Just my wife.
Stockings. Can't even talk. So just your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
I have like a list of most of the items. I just need to go out and execute the game plan.
Gotcha.
So that will be probably Friday morning. After the show, once I get everything wrapped up here, I'll probably
gotcha.
Go and take care of that.
Very nice. Go over to the convenience store adjacent to you guys' house. Go over there. Is that a marathon over there? Walk over there.
I mean, there is a CVS nearby, and I may or may not go to the CVS.
Hey,
but,
you can pick it all up at CVS.
But these are like the stocking items, so it's got to be like 8, 10, 12 items. They don't need to be big things.
Right.
I have already got the thing that I knew would be the hardest to get just because of limited quantities.
IndyCar diecast? Is that the hardest thing to okay.
No. There's another item that could be tough that I may or may not be able to get this late in the game. I just didn't think about it till earlier, but I got that last year. I didn't get this other item that I already have.
Gotcha.
Last year I have it now for this year, so I feel like, that evens out. But that's all I really have to do. Probably CVS, probably, a grocery store, probably a discount store or two, and I should be able to get everything I need.
There you go. I've been told we're done.
Yeah,
so
you didn't have to do anything.
This. Yeah, I would talk about this on morning show. I did not buy a single gift for anybody this year. My wife handles it everything because for so long we just don't get gifts for each other. It was back when we didn't have any money when we first got married, and it's just now we got 2 kids, so we stick with it. So I did not have to buy a single gift. I mean, I saw receipts that I didn't want to see. I see everything being bought on Amazon, but me physically buying a gift, no, nothing. But supposedly we're done. That said, my wife has been saying we're done for like 2 weeks, and yet she keeps leaving the house saying she has to go to Walmart to finish shopping. Explain that to me.
There's always another thing.
There's always something else.
What? I mean, how many people are? I mean, you have your immediate family. Do you have to do gifts? Like, do you have nieces and nephews?
Yeah, nieces and nephews, godparents, Noah's teachers, then Wendy's coworkers at work, stuff like that.
Wow,
so
next level.
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty full under the tree for sure.
Apparently so.
But I didn't have to buy any of it.
And here we are, December 20th, 2023. You have contributed nothing.
I've contributed nothing to the holiday.
Kinney family Christmas
nothing
shopping.
But merely my presence just brightens everybody around the holidays. Just don't bring up IndyCar right now around the holidays.
We're in a giving mood.
We put this out on Twitter. We were asking people's Christmas wish for IndyCar, and we had several people send us their wishes.
Yes, and we'll get to those in the mailbag this week. We'll start with ours on the show. I don't think it's that complicated. I mean, there aren't that many things on the wish list that, like, it's not going to go that far deep, right? Yeah. And so I'll let you go first because I'll come up with a different one because I don't want to have the same one.
I know some people will go OEM and this and that and all that stuff. For my Christmas wish for 2024, I want to see a plan.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want to this time next year know where IndyCar is trying to get in the next year, 3 years, 5 years. I just want something that we can look at and everybody can look at and say, okay, this is the direction. This is what they're trying to do. Things always come up, particularly in IndyCar, that disrupt things, and I get it. At the same time, give us something. Give us some sort of roadmap of where this series is going, because then you're able to weather the valleys a little bit better. because like, oh, this happened, but this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're planning to do in the years ahead. We don't really have that right now. If we had it, you could say, well, Honda's doing its thing, but at least this is where we're at. This is what they're going to do to try to combat costs and all that stuff. I don't have lofty expectations, Caleb, for 2024. I'm not saying OEMs. I'm not saying this race or that race or a TV deal that pays out through the roof. All I want is a plan.
Yeah, and it's interesting. IndyCar moved on from their previous marketing head the previous offseason, right? And I don't think there's ever been a name that I can recall.
Nothing that's been marketed, at least, that's for sure.
The VP of marketing that I can recall. It could be incorrect here.
Maybe they have one. They just didn't announce it.
No, not that I ever remember. So again, I like the 1 year plan, the 3 year plan, the 5 year plan, and throw in a marketing plan on top of that.
Right.
And I think that's a really good wish. I mean, that's kind of where we're at as far as, okay, so things are relatively stable in the near term. Long term, depends on what Honda does.
I would say midterm is just a couple years away.
Yeah. But in the very short term, IndyCar has a pretty good schedule. They have 27 expected full-time entries. We're still awaiting a Foyt entry. We're still awaiting both coin entries, but that's where we expect that number to end up. Once again, it's 27. Very positive.
Yeah.
The top end of what you want. I think you get above 28 and it's too many.
I think you're topped out at 27 right now for most races.
Outside of, obviously, the Indy 500, and if there's another big oval race that ever comes back, I'd be okay with going above that. But I understand some people aren't, because what happened in Vegas, I get it. It's completely fair. But IndyCar is at a spot where they're ready to take that next step. It just comes down to what is the plan to take that next step. And do you have any specifics you want to see happen as far as that plan, or anything you want to see in particular in that plan?
I would like to see some sort of cost reduction, or at least a plan to lessen the costs on engine leases. Or I would like to see a dedicated plan for marketing the sport. I would like to see a dedicated plan in terms of where you would like to be in terms of the amount of races. Whether that includes some sort of charter system that they're throwing around, if they wanted to unveil that at some point over the course of the 5-year plan. Obviously, I think a new chassis should be on there. Even if you come out tomorrow and say, hey, by 2028, there'll be a new chassis. It's a ways away, but at least it's a plan, right? If you're going to go with a different engine spec of some sort and say in 2027, this is going to be the engine. Anything is better than what we have. I might have low expectations here because we don't have anything. There's no plan, at least publicly. There's no plan. So I'm adding a bunch of stuff and naming a bunch of stuff off, but just give me a third of that and it would be something. It'd be more than we have. So just show me, even if it's something we can openly criticize on our podcast, at least it would be something. The plan may be misguided, but at least you have something. And I quite frankly question whether IndyCar internally has something like that, let alone publicly sharing something like that.
Yes. I think, again, just they're not going to share that publicly. That's fine. But we want them to maybe roll out stuff saying we have this coming up.
Yeah, in the pipeline, or we're working on this.
Now, not teasing always, we're working on international races and getting a third OEM, but beyond that, because they tease those things all the time.
Right.
But maybe instead of specifics, say we're working on XYZ, we're going to roll out XYZ next season at this time frame, something like that. I can get on board. Even
something as simple to say, hey, we recognize the issues that our OEMs are facing, that our teams are facing, and we're working on some improvements to do ABC. At least recognize the problem. The first step towards recovery is admitting you have a problem. You can't even get IndyCar to do that. I mean, at least admit that there are some less than happy people in the sport, and some very important people in your sport when you talk about Honda Performance Development, and I can't imagine General Motors is very happy either with the costs, et cetera, et cetera. The team at least admit that there's an issue and say that you're working on it. We can't even get that, right? It's just like it's just so everything is so secretive. It's like it's very much like the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. It's like nobody can like half joking, but seriously, like you can't step out of line or else. What? At least something's going to happen. We talked about it in the last podcast, but it's just like I would really like IndyCar to be a little bit more open or a lot more open. I think that starts with a plan. Let us see a plan. That's my wish for 2024. How about you?
All right. My wish for 2024, and this is, I guess, really for 2025, but it will be announced in 2024, is that the new TV deal is exceptionally more money than the current one. So we don't have like an exact number. What, anywhere between 15, 20 million a year that NBC's paying?
Yeah, I would say max 20.
Yeah. So double or more. Remember, NASCAR just got that new TV deal, 7 years, $7.7 billion. Obviously, IndyCar's not going to touch that. Even the Xfinity TV deal with the CW for $115 million per year. I don't even think IndyCar is going to touch that. But say they can double the current rights fee amount, that would be the step forward that could really, really help this series. And there's a good Forbes article by Bruce Martin that came out a few days back talking about those negotiations for that TV deal. And CW is one of the partners. Fox believed to be another. Obviously, they're negotiating with NBC as well, as they have the rights for 2024. And then the new partner, or if it continues to be NBC, would start in 2025. But I think that, to me, is the one thing that in the short term that can happen, is a realistic possibility, that if IndyCar is able to pull this off, they will basically get double the money for not really doing anything, right? I mean, like, I get that, yes, they have to hold the events, but like they're not having to make some major change to get this significant windfall. They've had incremental growth in TV numbers, TV metrics. It looks like 100 Days to Indy will be renewed, and they're working on international distribution for that. Everyone's been pleased with the metrics that have come from that. Mark Miles flew to the West Coast last Thursday, December 14th, to continue negotiations for the next IndyCar TV contract. And according to Bruce Martin, Miles intends to announce IndyCar's next media rights deal before the 108th Indianapolis 500 next May. So they have a timeline for this. Obviously, if you roll that out, say, anytime in the month of May, whether it's GP weekend, qualifying, Carb Day, right? I mean, all those options are a way to get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people aware of your next TV product and where it will be. That, to me, is the short-term thing that I think can make a huge difference, because that money can go toward leader circle money. Yes. It can go to promotions,
marketing,
staff, marketing, all of it.
Hiring staff. Imagine even just if you go from 20 to 40 million, what this series could do with an extra $20 million a year. And that's reasonable for $40 million. And if you have, as Bruce Martin's article in Forbes said, multiple partner or multiple interested parties, when you talk about Fox, CW, and NBC, ideally, that just raises the price, right? Because you can get a bidding war of sorts into who, if CW came out and said, we'll pay $40 million for IndyCar, that makes at least, even if you want to stay with NBC, they have to come close to that. Wouldn't you say we'll pay $30 million then? And IndyCar would say, well, we like our partner, but we're going to give them a discounted price. Even $30 million, an extra $10 million. They should get more than that, but at least it's something. So, I talked about this too at a previous podcast too, it would have to be just an insane amount of money for IndyCar, in my opinion, to think about leaving, because I look at NBC and their relationship with it, similar to what I look at as Dallara, is they love to always say they're going to open things up, whether it's the new chassis or all that, but they always go back to Dallara. It just seems like there's comfort there that IndyCar.
There's a reason for that.
Well, yeah, but I think also IndyCar is partially scared to go outside the box type thing. And even with a lot of money, if CW threw at it, I think, now does the CW deal start this coming year with Xfinity or the year after? Because it would be nice to see a year of numbers and production of the Xfinity series on CW, but we won't get that till 2025, correct?
Yes, 2025. And again, that deal is for all of the races, which is pretty big. All practices, which is pretty big.
This is crazy.
All qualifying. Pretty big deal. 7-year deal worth $115 million. So all 33 races broadcast
annually,
on over-the-air
correct?
TV.
$115 million annually.
Yes. And that is the deal. Now, on one hand, you look at it and say if IndyCar can get the same deal.
Wouldn't that be insane?
Like as far as the races, you may not get the practice and the qualifying, and that's fine. I think you make that concession if you can get every single race on over-the-air TV and knowing that you'll have Xfinity series promoting IndyCar. Remember, Xfinity is racing quite often on Saturdays.
True.
On Cup weekends. So that makes it easier in terms of promoting ahead, and it's a good teaser. So IndyCar would be in essentially the primary product because it'd air on Sunday, and they get all the promotion during the Xfinity race. Hey, check out IndyCar at Mid-Ohio tomorrow, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
CW, 1 Eastern, whatever. So that, to me, is the part of that I really like about that aspect. Meanwhile, with NBC, fans are familiar with the partner. You know what you're going to get. It's a quality broadcast as far as what they present. I get that we nitpick things, but I think they do a good job overall.
Yeah, and there's not many bells and whistles and stuff like that, though.
No, they don't overdo things. Lee Diffie, I think, does a great job. Obviously, Townsend Bell, James Hinchcliffe, pit reporters, everyone. I think
it's a solid group.
A solid job presenting the sport. It doesn't feel like the later ABC years where it felt like they were mailing it in. As far as what you're getting on the air, obviously people behind the scenes, I never really got that impression. It was more the talent.
Yeah, and I think too.
Maybe it had run its course.
Well,
right?
I don't think ABC was necessarily putting the production value on IndyCar that NBC does. I think the big question, let's say hypothetically, CW throws a lot of money. And I'm not going to be one here to say that you won't have a drop off in viewership if you go to the CW. You absolutely will. You will. But the money that you make, let's say it's an extra $30 million a year going from NBC to CW. That more than makes up for the drop, because you should be able to use that money in an excessive amount of things within your series, including marketing and promotion.
And remember, the CW has become essentially a year-round destination. In the release, they tout, so they'll have the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. They also have Inside the NFL, ACC college football and basketball, Live Golf. Everyone can make their jokes about it, but that was the first thing they had in terms of live sports. 100 Days to Indy. And then they say 48 weekends per year of live sports programming beginning in 2025. I mean, that's significant. And again, over the air and a free app for people to stream stuff. So look, this kind of reminds me, you go back to 2009 when IndyCar signed that 10-year, was it a 10-year deal with Versus?
Oh yeah, and that was smart.
We thought that was terrible. And Versus ended up turning into NBC Sports Network and turning into a legitimate cable property outlet before it was shut down a couple years ago. And IndyCar probably needed the money at that time. Early on, it was like, what are we doing here?
But they always need the money.
But then it turned out to be, I'd say they probably made the right play there.
Well, and two is people's opinion of the CW is the same opinion that people had when Fox was throwing big money around to get some sports. And it was basically, The Simpsons was kind of that first show to bring people into Fox in the mainstream. And then they just added from there, and they made a huge bid for the NFL. And people were like, Fox has the NFL. And then it just grew from there, right? So you have to start somewhere. And CW is trying to start somewhere similar to what Fox did. And everybody who scoffs and everything about sports being on the CW, that's really what Fox was. What would you say, 35 years ago? 30 years ago?
Yeah, it would have been in the mid-90s.
I mean, and
when
Simpsons
they got the NFL, and that was
Simpsons was, 88, 89 when it started, and even took 4 or 5 years to grow that to eventually get to the NFL. So I have no qualms about going to CW if that happens.
Remember, CBS thought they were, and NBC, I believe, right, were the other two, thought they were just, it was a lock. They were just going to get the NFL TV package. And when they didn't, they were stunned, but they essentially lowballed the NFL. And the NFL got a great deal from Fox.
And eventually it locked out either NBC or CBS without NFL at all at that point.
It would have been NBC.
Yeah, because CBS had the AFC.
The NFL for a while up until Sunday Night Football started in 2006, I believe. So, I mean, look, if you have a partner that wants to throw that kind of money, you take it, assuming that they also have a plan to promote. And I understand people are going to be like, how do I get the CW? Well,
everybody
buy an
has
antenna.
somebody.
You have access to it.
Yes.
In your local market. So that's the thing that I think, and antennas are cheap, at least in the US. You can get one for $15-20 or so. That's what I do to watch stuff on like local channels, because I hate watching sports knowing there's like a 30-second delay due to streaming. It drives me nuts. So
I always forget when we're watching the same thing and you're texting me and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Kind of like a play or two ahead.
Yes, in the future. But will the IndyCar look to the future and make that move, particularly if it comes with a big payday? They have to. If it's $5 million difference, you stay with NBC, in my opinion. If it's $10 million difference, I still think you switch to CW, in my opinion. And I think CW is going to bring a lucrative contract. But at the very least, hopefully, if you get into some sort of mini bidding war and CW says we're going to start at $50 million a year for IndyCar, I think they can get that. And is NBC interested enough to say, well, we'll give you 45 and to keep it, and all of a sudden you have an extra $25 million a year?
I mean, to me, getting 40 is a lot.
It'd be amazing.
Would be a game changer for IndyCar. And to me, again, get this announced by Indy 500 race day. You check that box. This would be so big for the series to double or triple their TV media rights fee and make sure that the streaming component is solid, because I think IndyCar is lucky with what they have with Peacock.
Yeah.
I get that people want to complain and all that. And yes, you have a race or two. I think next year it's 2 races on Peacock, the Saturday Milwaukee race in Toronto. But I think, as we've seen with streaming services and how they grow, Peacock is affordable. Yes, the interface is not my favorite.
No, but
beyond that,
relatively,
it's inexpensive and it has a lot of sports programming. For me as a sports fan, I have Big Ten football in the fall. I have Big Ten basketball in the winter. I have IndyCar in the spring and summer. Like that, they have me as a year-round person now. And
400 seasons of different Law and Order shows.
Yeah, that too.
To fill in the gaps.
So to me, this is the one wish I have, because I think it would transform IndyCar moving forward, because they would have so much more money to do the things they want to do without Penske himself having to invest a small fortune to get what he wants out of it. And that to me is the one thing that would be a game changer. And for IndyCar, they very much need it. Now, I haven't read or heard anything as far as, remember for years, the series is close to profitability, right?
Haven't heard that, have we?
I don't know where that stands right now, but
I mean, it would be nice to get a state of the series type address, wouldn't it?
Right.
Which I used to think that was what was going to become a thing around May, on the first practice weekend or something, or qualifying weekend on the Saturday, is you would get a state of the series from Roger. I think we got that the first year maybe, and then it went away. But I would think the big thing is at least IndyCar is in a position where there's multiple networks interested. That's step one. If it was just NBC interested, then they could lowball you. Say, well, nobody else wants you, so you're still getting $20 million a year. But you now have Fox and CW at least interested enough to kick the tires a little bit and maybe make an offer, and then you can start playing them off each other. And if you can do that, then the price goes up, up, up.
And as Indy44 pointed out on Twitter/X, there was an IndyCar reference on Amazon Prime, I believe on Jack Reacher on ESPN as well. UFC announcer mentioned the Indy 500. Is IndyCar paying for this placement?
No, I think it was just natural discussion, I think, wasn't it?
In the show, it was very, I saw the clip from, was it Jack Reacher, I believe?
I don't know.
It was a show on Amazon. It sounded very forced or whatever. It's like people sitting in a lobby and, they're speeding like it's the Indy 500 or something. But hey,
I don't know. That's kind of broad appeal,
right?
Yeah, it's not like, hey, they're speeding like they're on the road course at Barber or something. That seems forced to me.
Yeah.
But saying the Indianapolis 500, the Indy 500, I think it's well known. I feel.
I think you take it. You take those little things that, it's maintaining cultural relevancy and people, it becomes top of mind.
Yeah, but once again, it's still centering on one race. It's not a NASCAR reference because when you say NASCAR, it's not Daytona 500 only.
Yeah.
So you take it, of course, but I also think it proves the narrative that there's a problem because everybody knows what the Indianapolis 500 is. Not everybody knows what IndyCar is. You say NASCAR, people know what that is. It's a series. It's not a race. The Indy 500 is just one race, but you'll take it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will take it. All right. So those are our wishes. If we were to pick one wish.
Heartfelt wishes. And we will be sending this in detail addressed to Roger Penske in the mail.
And then we have the bizarre situation. So last week you had Sting Ray Robb announced as the driver for AJ Foyt Racing. Again, different numbered car in the 41, which used to be the third entry for the Indy 500, but this is the 41 car. It will be the second car for Foyt Racing. The 14 still a TBA, but Sting Ray Robb will compete full-time with Foyt. But the awkward part about all of this is Benjamin Pedersen tweeted out a statement after this announcement saying, "Statement, it's awesome to see that Sting Ray is joining us here at AJ Foyt Racing. I'd like to send a very big welcome. He'll be a great addition to our team. Looking forward to on-track testing soon." And then when asked about it at the press conference, Nathan Brown got a runaround answer from Larry Foyt. It said, not sure about that as far as would Benjamin Pedersen not be back at Foyt next year. Larry Foyt said, not sure about that. We're sorting all that out, so can't speak to that.
It's not a team that's going to run 3 cars, is it?
Could they? I mean, think about it. It's a Chevy team, so Chevy has the engine leases available. Perhaps they run 3 cars.
Because you think, okay, now with Sting Ray Robb in the fold, and then you still have Benjamin Pedersen and Santino Ferrucci, right?
Yeah, I mean,
conceivably,
Ferrucci will be probably the driver of the 14. It just comes down to funding.
The fact that he's talking Sting Ray Robb, is announced in the car that's the third car for the 500 in terms of the number.
Yeah, in terms of number.
Which is what I'm saying, is he running that third car full time? Or is Benjamin Pedersen still need to come up with money, or else he's going to be a part-time, or Santino Ferrucci only be a part-time? It's just interesting that he wasn't announced in one of the primary 2 cars. Which
though, he ran the 55 last year, so are they just keeping that number? And then,
yeah, maybe.
Is it a partial schedule? It is. Do they run all the road and street courses plus the Indy 500? How does that work?
Have they announced that he's a full season driver?
Pedersen?
Sting Ray Robb.
Sting Ray Robb, yes, he's a full season driver.
Do we know the sponsor?
No.
Okay.
Well,
we haven't seen a livery or anything for that car.
They didn't have a livery, but I think they actually did reveal the sponsor. I forget what it is, but there is a sponsor. I mean, we know he brings significant funding. I think the rumor out there is something like $8 million plus, which is very significant.
I think maybe you're still working things out with Ferrucci and Pedersen, and you say, let's do this for now, as we know we're in with Sting Ray Robb. Let's announce him while we're still working on the other 2. And maybe they're expecting one of those to not happen. Maybe they're thinking both of them could happen. But they still don't know with those 2, so they've added him to what would conceivably be a third car, but may not run 3, if that makes sense. But I guess looking at it from the outside in, I feel like, could Foyt run 3 cars? Should they? No. But could they? Maybe.
Well, and you also have to remember, there's the Penske element, right?
That's true. It's a good point.
Does Penske place a guy or gal in one of the seats, and then the other 2 are Foyt? Also, how that work? Will they have 2 cars in Texas, 2 cars in Indy, 1 car in Texas, 2 in Indy? How will that shape out as far as the shop space?
At the very least, could the relationship with Penske have led to added interest from sponsors to potentially allow them to go to 3 cars? Or maybe even Penske going, hey, we don't have room on our cars, but here's some companies and corporations that want to be involved. And because you're partnering with us, they'd be interested in being on your car. I mean, could we be seeing the fruits of this relationship already in terms of Foyt and having enough money to run 3 cars instead of 2?
And at the end of the Racer article talking about Sting Ray Robb moving to Foyt for 2024, it says the Foyt team will name the driver the number 14 Chevy at a later date. So no mention of the 55 anywhere. So this whole thing is fascinating to me.
Puzzling, to say the least. If you had to say who's the odd man out,
it's Pedersen.
Pedersen, not Ferrucci, you don't think?
Yeah, I think they will want a guy who can be competitive at Indy, and Ferrucci is proven to be that guy.
Yeah,
with what he's done. What was he, third this year? He's finished 4th before. He's finished top 10. So, I think every outing, right, that he's competed in the Indy 500. So I think he will get it. It's just a matter of, will Penske throw a lot of their resources around that car, a different car? How will that factor in as well?
It's quite the conundrum. When we think everything has been settled, or we know what's going on with the remaining seats, and we're saying, it's just filler seats anyway. Foyt finds a way to really throw us for a loop, don't they?
Yeah, yes, they do. They absolutely do. I don't think anyone saw this playing out the way that it did, but that's where we're at, and we'll see how this goes from here. I'm not expecting any driver announcements, obviously, until the earliest January, but you would think they'd want to keep Santino Ferrucci in the fold for 2024.
Is it interesting that Ferrucci has been silent on this matter? We've heard from Pedersen.
I mean, Pedersen's, in theory, he's under contract. It was presented to be a multi-year deal. Right. I think a 3-year deal is what I read. Is
because we've heard from Pedersen and not Ferrucci mean that Ferrucci is on the outside looking in unless he can find sponsorship?
Perhaps. Could that third car be Ferrucci running ovals and then someone else running road and street courses? Based on
I think it's impossible to know for sure, but I think depending on how you look at this, you could go every which way. We don't know a lot. We're just hypothesizing here.
Yes, but this is the puzzling thing. I think when you look at the remaining seats that we know, so Foyt has the 14. I would say Ferrucci's probably the favorite for that. It just comes down to funding, and they're probably going to wait until January or February to reveal that, get everything buttoned up. You have the 2 Dale Coyne cars. I would fully expect Devlin DeFrancesco to be one of them, right?
You would expect that, yeah.
The other one is, who knows?
Could be you or me.
Yeah. And then we already know Dreyer and Reinbold for the Indy 500 entries. Ryan Hunter-Reay, Connor Daly expected to be the drivers there. And then if Marco Andretti wants to run a car, he'll have a 4th entry for Andretti in the Indy 500. And then Abel Motorsport, if they return with RC Enerson. And then that's really about it. That's how far along we are. And then, and a 4th at Ray Hall, which I would guess Takuma Sato would be a very good option for them.
Yeah, for the 500 for sure. So, man, all of a sudden we have questions, and we won't be getting any answers likely until January.
For sure.
At least.
Well, that is a look. If you agree or disagree with us, let us know. You can find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for our email list. It is free. We'll send out episode emails and any other special announcements, so free to subscribe there. You can also follow us on social media, Twitter/X, Instagram. The handle is IndyCar Podcast. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. You can always email us questions, comments, concerns, what have you, to newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. You can support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and several others for their support. Again, starting just $1 a month. And as always, you can download the podcast for free on your favorite podcasting platform: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Castbox, Player FM, Google, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Napster.
I don't think we're on Napster. Does that still exist?
I have no idea. I was going to ask you. LimeWire?
I have no idea. I doubt it.
I don't think so.
But again, you can download us for free all on those platforms. All right, mailbag time, and a lot to get to for this week. We talked about Christmas wishes. We have some comments from last week, and so let's get to it. Hunter's Way 67 saying MP, as in Marshall Pruitt, says in his article he's replacing Pedersen. What gives? We don't know. We just talked about that. Also, I Am Analog says, does this qualify as spicy season? Ooh, I like that.
Well,
it's beyond
we thought,
silly.
Yes, so we thought it was settling down, settling season maybe, but now it's spicy season.
A couple people responding to your tweet, Mr. Pinsky, what have you done to improve IndyCar outside of IMS and the Indy 500 since your acquisition of the series in 2019? It's a Seinfeld gif of George saying nothing. Poet Shevchenko, it's a gif from Office Space. What would you say you do here?
Which is a perfect response too.
Jamin T14 said, it's all fine here. I see great things ahead with someone sticking their head in sand. We promise to be positive, so we're not going to add further comment.
Well, which I feel like maybe some people in the Penske Corp are like that, stick their head in the sand.
This is wild because I noticed it too. This from run_Mark_run. So I watched the Santa Claus last weekend.
Yep.
And Mark has this question for IndyCar podcast and Ask Off Track. Is that Mario Andretti's IndyCar at 42.25 in the Santa Claus? It has to be because I noticed it too.
Because I actually, once I saw that tweet, I looked it up. I looked up Santa Claus. I took a screenshot. I zoomed. I took way too much time on this, by the way. Took a screenshot, zoomed in, and then did a livery search for Mario. And yes, it very much is that. And Mario confirmed it because he liked the tweet.
Oh, there you go.
So it had to be, right? Because I'm sure Mario was a consultant on the Santa Claus. Well, Tim Allen's a big gearhead. And
Mario and Michael were on episodes of Home Improvement in the 90s.
Right.
With
they
Tim
were.
Allen.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe that was a leftover prop.
It makes sense. And I said right away, watching it, when Charlie grabbed the car, and I said to my wife, we were watching it on, this would have been Saturday night, I believe. And I said, that's Mario Andretti's IndyCar. I said that's his car from like 94.
Yeah. Because that's when the movie came out in 94, so it had to be like a 93.
93 or 94 car. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's a Mario Andretti IndyCar that the kid's holding. So there you go.
Yep. The
wild.
Black and white and red livery with, was it Texaco on the car? It varied.
Texaco, Haviland, Dirt Devil.
I think it was Haviland was on the car in the movie, I think.
Okay.
I was trying to zoom in, and again, I spent way too much time.
You really did go next level.
I did.
I just was watching it, and I knew right away that's what it was.
Yeah, very impressive.
Or it could have been Nigel Mansell. Just kidding.
Kidding. No, it was Mario. Mario confirmed it by liking their tweet. So.
Yes, absolutely. This from GP Eurocars. So responding to your tweet about what has Penske done. Can't be that bad. So much new talent arriving for the world's best series and an Australian flag. I made sure to double check that it was Australian,
not New Zealand.
Yeah. R. Cole said, thanks to us for getting this stuck in my head. And it's, of course, the Love Grows song by
Edison Lighthouse, wasn't it?
Yeah, Edison Lighthouse that we talked about last week. Elsewhere on responses. Okay, so you tweeted, can Hy-Vee buy IndyCar? Because, again, Luke Combs, Post Malone will be two of the performers for the Hy-Vee IndyCar weekend at Iowa Speedway.
That's big time.
Yeah.
That is very big. I mean, that's arguably the biggest country act right now in Luke Combs, and arguably the biggest, what would you say, hip-hop act?
Like
rap act with
pop. I don't really know what genre, because he like crosses over multiple.
Well, because I asked this because Luke Combs is my favorite country singer right now, and my wife and son really like Post Malone, and so I was thinking, hey, maybe we go. So I asked my wife. I said, how listenable, that makes sense, is Post Malone live? And she's like, no, not for Noah. Like he can listen to clean versions with my wife, but there's no way. She's like, there's no way, because he'll be 14. And no, she nixed that idea, because I was like, hey, we could go see two races. He can listen to Post Malone. I get Luke Combs. Everybody wins. And she shot that down pretty quick. But those are two huge acts, which then made me say, well, if Hy-Vee can invest in these musical acts, by gosh, can they invest in the IndyCar series?
A couple of replies there. DeGuerra said, I think Honda should buy IndyCar and call it Honda Car. Jay Blasteri said, can Hy-Vee be the third OEM?
Well, was that before or after I tweeted about Purdue Engineering being the third OEM?
Before, which also, yes. These are our replies to our IndyCar Christmas wish, which we like to do every year. I think it's kind of a good recap of the year. Atlanta Cat 99 said, Dear Santa, I've been very good this year. Like a championship for Kyle Kirkwood, return of the Freedom 100 for the USF Pro 2000 Series to race the Milwaukee Mile, for Braden Eves to win that championship. Sincerely, Elaine. P.S. A puppy would be nice too.
Elaine has a sizable Christmas list.
BK Hickey said, a long-lasting competitive, which we currently have, series. Poet Shevchenko, my Christmas wish is that when we go to the St. Pete GP, the IndyCar will decide to show up too. There may be cars, there may be a race, but I want to feel that IndyCar is present for the fans who make the time and effort to come. It's a good point.
Yes, I agree.
It can't just be a corporate atmosphere, right, where you're checking a box. Hunter's Way 67 said a third OEM, and if it's not too much to ask for, a new car. Thanks. And Racer Mac RTP1 said Michigan 500, which I would also second that.
We'll see if any of those Christmas wishes can be granted, including ours. We'll see throughout the calendar year of 2024.
But a good list of Christmas wishes, good list of items for the mailbag, and now we move on to news and notes. And we talked about that Hy-Vee concert. So Luke Combs will be the pre-race on Saturday, July 13th. Post Malone will be the post-race on Sunday, July 14th. And the good news is additional acts will be announced in the coming weeks, according to Nathan Brown of the Indy Star.
Imagine you'll have a post and a pre also added, but man, it's a great start.
And a pre.
Yes. Again, what are you talking about?
Post Malone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, you get a Post Malone post-race Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just
I get it. I get what you're saying, but it's a banging start. And as we've said, as long as people are buying tickets, I don't care if they're there to see Luke Combs or race cars or Post Malone. As long as they're buying tickets.
As long as they show up. Right. Here's the thing. People complain, but then you look at the Indy 500 and you get up to 20,000 people just in the snake.
Yeah, that don't care about anything going on. But they're counted just the same.
Paying customers are the same.
Paying customers, I don't care why they're there.
How many people go to the Indy 500 who don't watch a single race the rest of the year?
How much percentage would you say?
Ooh.
I would say upwards of 50% of people.
Yeah. 50, it may even be a little low.
I think so too. I think maybe you go approach 60%.
We could be 60 or 65.
I really think it's a great point.
And you know what? That's okay.
Who cares? Their money spends the same.
Yeah.
Just like the people at Iowa.
The Indy 500 could very well be essentially sold out. Who knows? We'll see what happens with Kyle Larson coming on board.
Person there to see Post Malone that has to sit through the heat potentially on Sunday and a race that they think is absolutely boring. I don't care. They bought a ticket.
Elsewhere, you have Honda Performance Development, now Honda Racing US, so a name change. They also will contribute to the development of the new F1 Power Unit. It will be raced by Aston Martin starting in 2026. Honda says that with 3 F1 races now in the U.S., the new HRC US will be involved.
How about that?
Pretty good news there. You had the unveiling of Joseph Newgarden on the Borg-Warner Trophy last week, the Stutz building in Indianapolis, and Newgarden even gave some fans a track tour before the Borg-Warner unveiling.
Did you feel like it looked like him?
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. Some of them you look and you're like, ooh. And they do a tremendous job because they couldn't do anything close to that. But, sometimes you just say, yeah, I guess. But no.
I mean, Kanaan looks like him.
Oh, yeah. Well, the nose makes it, of course. But no, I thought it was a very, very good, very, very good version of Joseph Newgarden. And I'm sure it's hit him a million times since he won the race. But, that's a special moment when you see your face on the Borg-Warner. I can't imagine.
Elsewhere, from an unveiling to some sad news, the Indy 500 quilt lady died. That started a tradition since 1976. Janetta Holder, who made a quilt for the winner, started in 76 with Johnny Rutherford, given more than 40 patchwork masterpieces to the Speedway's race victors. hundreds more to drivers at other tracks, celebrities, and even President Jimmy Carter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's
it's unfortunate,
cool.
But she was, what, over 100?
That's a good question. I don't know if she was over 100 because she was still doing this pretty recently.
She was up there, though.
Yeah, she was born in 1932. So
91.
Yes, because
91.
Born in May. So
we should all be so lucky to reach 91.
Yes, for sure. So sad news there. To some good news. Congrats to Sage Karam and his wife as they're welcoming a baby next year. Also, a tie into IndyCar. Renault willing to resume talks with Andretti regarding a supply of a power unit if Andretti gets approved prior to Cadillac being ready. So say Andretti races a year, they would be able to use Renault as a power unit before getting Cadillac on board.
Now, it brought up an interesting question, and we saw this actually on Racer with a comment.
Yes.
And it was on the comment that was discussed. Marshall Pruitt talked to the
Chevy
to Chevy about how interested they were and what Honda had to say and where their stance is, and basically asked him repeatedly, would you be able to handle an entire series, which he did not answer.
Yeah, Chevy basically ducked around every question.
Very true. But somebody posed the question of if General Motors gets into Formula One, how will that affect their impact in IndyCar? Because I have a hard time seeing zero correlation between Honda's return to Formula One and now them asking about potentially exiting IndyCar. You cannot convince me those things are not linked. And I just wonder if the same case would be for Chevy. If tomorrow Formula One came out and said, hey, GM, you're in starting in, 2026?
Yeah.
If Chevy's like, yeah, you know what? We're not too interested in staying in IndyCar either because now we're going to be in Formula One. I don't know the answer to it. I think it's just a fascinating question.
Absolutely. I remember previously that IndyCar Deep Throat, it said that Cadillac, could they be interested in branding themselves as another OEM in IndyCar? Where you have Cadillac, you have Chevy, you have Honda. Ideally, you have another.
Wouldn't that be amazing? My head would explode. Like literally explode if they had 4 OEMs.
Right.
And if it takes a spec engine to get there, sign me up. That may be sacrilege to some people. I don't care. Sign me up.
I would be fully on board with that. And speaking of IndyCar Deep Throat, actually got an update on some stuff. So there are the owners' meetings in Indy, which they usually hold in mid-December. This is pretty standard practice for IndyCar. And a couple of takeaways from IndyCar Deep Throat on this. One, Fox, more of a player in the TV package. This would be a short-term thing, and there's concern, do you go with the short-term gain? Do you go with the long-term play and stay with NBC? I mean, to me, you take the money as long as the package is competitive.
Or more so, yes.
And beyond just a monetary aspect, right? You got to make sure there's dedication as far as a streaming aspect. You got to make sure,
which is kind of concerning because what's the streaming app for Fox?
Fox Sports Go, which is not that great of an option.
But again, if they're throwing more money into it than what that NBC is, I think you chase the money. But for IndyCar Deep Throat, basically Penske Corp interested in taking maybe a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
For the money and see how it goes, as opposed to signing a 3 to 4 year deal with NBC for less money. We'll see. But it sounds like from IndyCar Deep Throat that Fox is a much bigger player than many people are giving them credit for.
And then another note out of those meetings, one, people obviously concerned about Honda. I don't think that's a surprise. Like, this is legitimate. It's not posturing, even though we did bring up that tweet that Indy Oreo had last week, with Honda's threats about 20 years ago. This does feel different because of, again, the F1 aspect of them helping with the F1 engine, with everything they're doing in IMSA and WEC and all of that, the hypercar, right? Sports car racing has never been stronger in the last, 30 years, 40 years? Definitely 30 years. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing is the hybrid thing. Like, there's potential it could be delayed till 2025, 2026.
And it's interesting because IndyCar Deep Throat brings up the issue that we brought up on this podcast, that the teams are saying you want to debut this new technology in the middle of the season, heading into the summer when we are at our busiest in terms of racing. That makes zero sense.
It's not feasible for the team.
0 cents to all of a sudden go through the Indianapolis 500 and say, okay, on Sunday we're racing this engine and this package, and then coming back on Sunday, a week from there, 7 days from now, we're racing hybrids, and the week after at Road America, because you have 2 race weekends after the 500. And then by then, after that, you only have like 5 races left. So what's the point? So IndyCar Deep Throat kind of backing up what we said, and him saying that that there's definite discussion within the teams that are bringing up the very same issues that we brought up on this podcast, and say that makes no sense, and maybe being delayed the entire year.
Any other big takeaways?
Well, just listening to IndyCar Deep Throat and basically the message being that things are much more dire than even we understand publicly. But it also sounds like the teams are finally starting to push back a little bit behind the scenes and really saying that this is a big problem. We are frustrated because there's less money coming in. You've taken the leadership circle money, or at least some of it, and invested it instead of new money. You're taking from teams. You're taking from OEMs. And where is the return? And Honda has finally come out and said it. And this is different than a team owner here or an engineer here, there kind of speaking out of turn. This is a major part of your sport. And I think the biggest point to me was you have investment in F1. You have investment in NASCAR. You have investment in sports cars, in WEC, in grassroots racing.
Yeah. I mean, he does a lot of stuff in dirt track and
local ovals and midgets and stuff, and saying Honda's investing in that.
Yeah, which Toyota's already invested in that. You have to keep that in mind, along with Ford and Chevy, along with other smaller engine builders. So if Honda's going that route, that is not good for IndyCar.
So, all these major series and minor series and circuits are having investments except IndyCar. And he also brought up too about last January of 2022.
Yeah.
When Roger Penske flew over to Japan to Toyota, and it was all but done, and something happened to derail Toyota joining the series as a third OEM. And since then, the series has really been lost behind the scenes in terms of it was all but done, and it sounds like Chevy knew it was coming and Honda knew it was coming, and all of a sudden they were looking at their bottom lines and saying, man, this is going to be a tremendous help to us, and it went away, and nobody really knows why, other than a few select people, I'm sure. But that single incident has really changed the fortunes of this entire series. And I think that was going to be the real moment that you said, wow, Roger Penske came in, delivered what he could do with this series, and landed a third OEM. Something happened to that derailing, and it's been a mess ever since behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And it's starting to leak out into the public's forum now.
And again, IndyCar was the closest with Toyota compared to all the other names. Like a name we forgot to bring up was Alfa Romeo, like a decade ago, like 2012, 2013, somewhere around that time frame. Obviously, they did have Lotus briefly. It didn't pan out. Talked about rumors of BMW. Obviously, Ferrari, but that felt more like a song and dance than a realistic option.
Hyundai?
I don't know if
I don't know how deep they got into that, but basically sounds like it was
Porsche was almost set to be announced and it didn't happen. So,
but it was all but done with Toyota, from what it sounds like, and something happened last January or almost 2 Januaries ago that erased that possibility, and it is really shaken up the series at every level.
Time for our tweet of the week, and it's just one, and it's good. And I think it wraps up everything about this situation in terms of who's getting the seat. This from Marshall Pruitt. You know the silly season has lost its effing mind when 2 drivers are fighting over who gets to have the last place seat.
You know it gets crazy. And And that's one positive. We'll end it on the positive is there are still a multitude of drivers that want to be in the IndyCar series to the point that they'll step over each other and get a seat. And another one thinks
it's not even competitive to win a race.
Not even competitive. I mean, seriously, the expectations are so low with that seat, but people bringing multi-million, 7-figure budgets to try to land that seat. And in that respect, IndyCar is thriving in terms of available seats on the grid, and drivers that are interested in racing in this fledgling IndyCar series.
All right, time to go from the IndyCar series to our random split era driver of the week who competed
in a fledgling series
Car
himself.
World
Speaking
series.
Of fledgling series, 2005 Champ Car, which is always a fertile ground, and you have the details on this week's random split era driver of the week.
Yes, it is Andrew Ranger who competed in, I kid you not, this is the real name. I always love this. The 2005 Bridgestone presents the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford. Also took part in 2006 as well with Conquest Racing.
Now you laugh, but you can't get Ford within a million miles of open wheel racing.
Ford will not even sniff an open wheel car.
No, unless it's Formula One.
That's true, which they will return to.
Yes, but yeah, I didn't know that Andrew Ranger did 2 complete seasons.
Yeah, and he
Champ Car.
He was middle of the pack, but he had some good results. He was second in his second race at Monterey in Mexico, not Monterey, California. A couple top 10s elsewhere in that 2005 season: Portland, Cleveland, Denver, Surfers Paradise, and Mexico City. Remember, they raced at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez as well. So 10th in points. His rookie year, came back, had a lot of top 10s. Just one top 5, though, that was at Surfers in 2006. Also finished 10th in points both those years. So, again, that's so when you had smaller grids. You had some good drivers, though. That's the thing. The grids were smaller, but there was a lot of talent. And
you sound like a commercial for Indy Lights.
He was teammates with Nelson Philippe in 2005. Ranger was the Canadian sponsored by MyJack and Tide.
Who won the series in 2005? Bruno Junqueira?
Come on, don't think too hard. Sebastian Bourdais.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 2002 to 2006. That's right.
2004 to 7.
4 to 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
2003 was PT. 2002, I think, was D'Amata, but that was still kart. And then in 2006, this is where it was Charles Zwolsman Jr., who I think is a previous driver of the week, a Dutch driver who was a rookie that year. But Ranger, sponsored by Tide, MyJack, MSR Houston Racing School, Grand Prix of Montreal, and Walmart. Oh. I remember the Walmart.
Yeah, I do.
That would have been
decent looking
for
livery.
the race in one of the races in Canada, I believe. So let's see. Yeah. So that's Andrew Ranger.
What else did he do? I think was he in Atlantics for a year?
Yeah, he had a lot of success. I mean, he was like the next big thing in open wheel. So he was 4th in the Atlantic Championship with Sierra Racing in 2004. Then he did do one cup race in 2011 at Watkins Glen.
Road course specialist.
Yeah, finished 35th. Did nationwide a couple of races in 2008, one in 2009, one in 2010, a handful in 2011, a couple in 2012, a handful in 2013 as well, a truck start in 2014, and did Canon Pro Series East, Pro Series West, the Pinty Series, which he's competed in for many years. In fact, he won that series in 2019, along with in 2007 and 2009. So
wow, still pretty active.
I'd say the NASCAR Pinty Series, which is in Canada, has done CASCAR. He's done ARCA. So
he's got around.
He's done a lot of stuff.
But what he didn't do is win a race.
No.
In Champ Car.
Won 31 races in NASCAR Pinty Series, but did not win a race in Champ Car. So
just the series that keeps on giving us random split drivers of the week.
Absolutely. That wraps it up for us for the year. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. We'll see you in 2024. We'll take next week off and probably the week after, unless we have crazy breaking news in IndyCar. So we'll see you in a couple weeks' time in January here on New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.